Today, I'm going to show you how we vet tens of thousands of virtual assistants from the Philippines down to just the top 1%. I'm Zach. I'm the founder of Talented. We place talent from the Philippines in 7- and 8-figure e-commerce businesses. We have our own Amazon store that does $1 million a year in revenue, and I've been hiring from the Philippines since 2021. I'm making this video because I see a lot of business owners that completely toss out their standards for vetting when they hire overseas, and they really just look for the bare minimum requirements of like internet connection and a pulse, and then they're surprised when they don't perform well, when they have to keep reteaching them the same stuff. Today, I'm going to share with you the exact 4-level vetting protocol that we have used to filter out 99% of applicants for all of our clients at Talented. I want you to vet and hire the perfect VA for your e-commerce business. And one day, I hope that you work with us to find your next overseas hire. We're going to cover why I think having double standards leads to failure, the 4-level vetting protocol, and then how to actually make this work for your business. So the process I see a lot of people follow is starting off with the brief application, usually on the job board itself, on Upwork, on online jobs. Then they move them to an English and speed test. Then they have a 15-minute interview where they ask them about their strengths and weaknesses. And then they have them starting on Monday. Now, you would never hire someone from the US with that kind of process because you understand that the stakes are higher. But we convince ourselves that it's okay when we hire overseas because, well, the salary is lower. I mean, we can always just find another one, right? And it's just for basic tasks. They don't need to be that complex. Or I can't find someone with that kind of quality hiring from the Philippines. Then that's how you end up owing the bad hiring tax. We have all that time that we wasted hiring this person, training this person, then the opportunity cost of not getting the task done right the first time, the wasted salaries, the damaged team morale because your team sees that you're okay with subpar employees. Also, kind of like the stepdad effect where they're not sure if they should get comfortable with this person yet because they might just leave next week. And the emotional drain of starting that process over and over again. I think it fails because vetting for a great hire requires far more steps to reasonably predict the outcome. With that, you're basically gambling the chance that they're going to end up well if you're not going any deeper, because the bad candidates are going to easily get hired and pass right through your process. So what does it look like when you actually have standards when you hire from the Philippines? Well, you get someone who takes ownership of their responsibilities. They think like you do. They share the same values as you, and they really help you scale your business. Instead of thinking, how fast can we hire someone? What if we thought, how can we hire someone so good we never have to hire for this role again? Now, if you have a good process, if 1,000 people see your job posting, you could end up with 10 interviews, 3 follow-ups, and just 1 hire. But most people, when they're on online jobs or Upwork, like there's maybe in the 50s or 100s that apply and they hire 1 from it. At that point, it's just a numbers game. I want to have as much input as possible so I can filter out to just the good ones. So that's when our 4-level vetting protocol comes in. We start off with the initial application, which includes a video response. Then we move them to the written response, which has mock scenarios. Then the initial one-on-one 30-minute interview, and then the follow-up 3-man interview. So for the initial application, we gather how they found us so we know where to focus our efforts, their resume, their English tests, their speed tests, their work status, and most importantly, the video response portion. This is where most people fall off. The 2 questions we ask currently are, what is something not on your resume that you're proud of? And what's a project you've been working on recently outside of work? And this was a recent campaign we just did. We had 2,700 people see the job posting, 1,400 started it, and 300 of those actually completed to the end. Most of them fell off at that video response portion. 76% of people gave up, which is great because if they didn't make it to the end of that, if a video response is what deters them away, I don't want them working with our clients. Now, before I even get to the video response, with that number of applications, I have to have some way of disqualifying them earlier in the process, which starts off with the English test. If it's an A1 or an A2 score, communication is a bare minimum, and English is a barrier to that. Then speed tests, if they have less than 50 megabits per second, if the resume is very poorly formatted, and if they haven't had work in over a year, if they want to work for multiple clients or take on multiple jobs. Before I even click on their video response, if I can see that there's no light turned on and they're not wearing a shirt, which I've seen numerous times. From there, I'm going to go deeper and actually watch the video responses. So first thing I'm looking for is, are they reading from a script? Can I see their eyes going across the screen? Does it sound like an answer ChatGPT would have said? How would I rate their answer to the question on a scale of 1 to 5? Does their English fluency match their test scores? If they scored a C2, or they claim they scored a C2, does the way they speak actually, is it like someone that would score a C2? Because I didn't even score that. And then what patterns can I notice from past successful hires? Like, do I see any similarities between this person and someone that's done well for a client of ours? The best initial applications have a resume that show they stay with the same company for a while and just recently became available for work. Their video responses are authentic to them, something that's specific to their life. They prepared for the video and they have a professional presence, a vibe to them. A great example of this whole application process is Ben. We just placed Ben with a client of ours recently. And if we actually pull up his application here, before I even click on the video response, you'll see, well, the DC shirt, not what I would have picked, but I know he wasn't wearing that coat before he started recording this. So he put on the coat. He has a headset, he's got a gaming chair, and he's got a clear background. All great signs for an applicant. And if that goes well, then I'll send them an email link to our written response on Google Forms. So the first thing I'm looking at before I even open their response is how quickly did they complete the assessment from the time I sent it to when they finished it. And did they acknowledge my email? Because remember, there's no thread. This is a cold email. So did they say like, let me know that they completed it, or let me know that they at least got the email? If this is a role for direct experience, this written response would have specific scenarios they would face in that role, see how well they actually know it. And if this is a role that does not require direct experience, this would be mock scenarios, situations they would find themselves in any role or on a team, say. These are supposed to be test their problem-solving skills. Immediate disqualifiers here are first ChatGPT responses, because since it's in a Google form, it makes it easier for them to want to ChatGPT it, but it's pretty obvious to tell. If they only provided one sentence response, they didn't put in any effort. If it took them longer than 48 hours to complete, and if they have obvious English issues. The best written responses have an authentic voice, again, something that they actually wrote themselves. I can tell they thought about it, and they completed it within 12 hours, and they followed up. Of course, Ben did both those things. Here was his follow-up email. And actually, we're gonna hop into his actual written response. So if you see, this first question is about your team having a bad week, and he gives a very genuine response on how he would handle that. Also, ChatGPT is not gonna put in a smiley face right there, so I know he actually wrote that, but again, great example of a response. Then the next step, if someone passes that, is my Google Calendar link where they can schedule a 30-minute block for us to chat. The initial interview. Now, for the initial interview, my red flags are, first, if they're 1 minute late. That might sound harsh, but punctuality is very important to me, and so even just 1 minute late means that that's how they're gonna be for the actual job. And I don't want our client with someone who shows up late to things. If they have background noise, they got music playing in the background. If they answer an unrelated question, like I ask this and they're answering this entirely different question. If their internet keeps cutting out, if they have poor English, and if they don't even know what role they're applying for. Some green flags would be if they hop into the meeting room 5 minutes early, they're in a quiet environment, they take time to think about the answer. So after asking a question, they might, instead of just blurting out the first thing that comes to their head, they take a second, or they ask for clarification if they don't understand it. If they've done their background research, so they'll say like, oh, I watched your Facebook Reels. If they have goals of leadership, because I want long-term commitments, and so, which usually comes with some sort of managerial or leadership role, so if they aspire for something like that. And if they're all smiles, if they're happy to be on that call. There we can see Ben right here with that big smile of his. The 30-minute interview structure I follow starts off with framing it, so I don't just hop right into questions. I let them know what they can expect today, that kind of ease their nerves a little bit, let them know that I'm just here to learn more about them. Then I'll have them run me through their resume, their journey on how we got to the call today. After that, I'll have deeper questions on their background, like what's been your favorite role? Why'd you leave this one? Then I'll deep dive into some more character related stuff, like who's the best leader you've had? What's a moment you're not proud of? What's your biggest contribution? Then I'll wrap it up with the next step. So when they can expect to hear from me again. Now, if someone made it this far to the interview and I already know that I'm not going to have a follow-up with them, I just tell them right on the call. I don't hit them with like we'll get back to you. I let them know I don't think this is going to be a good fit. I'm not trying to waste their time. The tips I follow for interviewing are, first, make it as close to a conversation as possible. This gets them to open up and go past that initial defense they might have, that reservedness, so they can tell me about how they really feel. Along with that, I'm asking questions they did not prepare for. If they're just answering with a rehearsed question, then I didn't ask a good question. Also, I always have follow-ups. So I'm not just going question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. I'm asking a question, they're answering it, and then I'm thinking if I have anything else related to that. I'm not afraid to dig deep. If they say something that is not a complete answer, or I say, that might be an issue later, I dig into it right there. I'm not saving that for later. I'm also fully present on the call. Like, other than a little bit on my trackpad, I'm not checking emails, I'm not checking texts. I'm showing them I'm engaged with them, I'm smiling back at them, because I have the meeting being recorded and transcribed, so there's nothing for me to be doing other than focusing on them. I have my left side of the screen is the meeting and the right side is the structure, so I at least know where I'm supposed to be going next with it. The best interviews, I find myself nodding along with their answers, and I want to talk to them more. I can't wait for the follow-up. Now, I've never done this before, but today, and today only, I'm gonna put a link in the description to my full interview template that I use on every interview. Now, there's gonna be some questions because I only want this in the hands of business owners, but if you want access to that, hit the link in the description below. After we do the initial interview, I'm gonna send it off to the client, see if they wanna schedule a follow-up, schedule those, and start the reference checks. For the follow-up interview, I follow a 3-man structure, so it's gonna be me, the client, and the candidate. I'm basically there to facilitate it. We start off with a candidate intro because the client up to this point has seen several interviews, and so I want to refresh their mind about who this person is, give a quick elevator pitch. Then I'll have the client give an intro of who they are, a bit about their business, because up to this point, the candidate doesn't know much about them. Then the client will have their own questions. If this is a experience role, they'll dive deep into those tactical questions. Also stuff that I didn't cover in the initial interview. Then I leave some time for the candidate to ask questions about the role, about the company, because if they're gonna be committing to this company long-term, it has to be one that they're confident in. Then we'll wrap it up and set a timeline for when they can expect to hear from us next. Some tips here are to look for chemistry between the client and the candidate, and to share the skeletons in your closet. This might sound counterproductive, but when they made it to this point, it works well because you're basically trying to talk them out of it and set their expectations lower, that like, look, this is a hard role and we're kind of disorganized and you're gonna have to be doing a lot of stuff, like you're gonna have to be proactive with it. Once I get the commitment from them, they're like, after they've heard everything and they're like, no, like given everything, I think this is gonna be a good role for me. Then I know that they're gonna be successful in the role. And then I can exceed their expectations when they actually hop into the company and they're like, oh, it's not as bad as you made it out to be. With the final interview, you really have to trust your instinct. It shouldn't be yeah, this person's good enough, they can probably do fine. I want it to be a hell yes from both sides, let's get it going. If that's the case, then we send the offer letter. To implement this into your business today, you're gonna start off with building your hiring funnel. Now, you've heard of sales funnels. Hiring funnel is gonna be the same thing. You start off by driving traffic to the job posting and then preparing all the steps to get someone down to the bottom, however you see fit, whether it's 4 steps, 10 steps, probably don't do 10 steps, but whatever works best for your business. Then filtering through those daily, because time kills all deals, and so I'm looking at applicants, moving people on to the next steps every day. Then holding the interviews, the initial and the follow-up with a second pair of eyes, then sending the offer letter 2 weeks from the campaign launch. After every interview, whether it's a good one or a bad one, I go back and review that applicant's entire journey. See if there's any things that I missed, green flags or red flags, and ways I could create patterns for next time. Not only does this make me a better interviewer, a better recruiter, but then if I plan on delegating some of the earlier portions of it, I have a library of what good looks like. Common mistakes I see with the vetting process are, first, over automating it, so leaving it up to just a bunch of test questions, but I retain that human element. Making the interviews shorter to get through more, and then you end up with less information and not watching back the interviews to improve. I've taken hundreds of interviews, and the progression of growth from the first to today is pretty crazy, and I consider that a large part of watching them back. It's rough, I know, but watching them back and seeing just one thing I can do better in the next one, repeating that over and over again by the 100th, pretty good. So if you found this video valuable, then I think you'll enjoy this one too. It's a full breakdown of our 2-week hiring process. I appreciate watching the end, and I'll see you in the next video.